Hello, Mint 2020 viewers. I'm Ryan. I believe I'm Mint's #1 ambassador. I'll have to check the list. I might have fallen down, but I think I'm still at the top spot. And I'm the fortunate one today who gets to do a Q&A with Jason Loftus, the director of the film you just watched. I would imagine that's when we'll show it. Ask No Questions. Jason, thanks so much for being here today for this Q&A. And I'll wait. We're still 2 days till festival, but I really look forward to hearing what our viewers think of your film. I want to make you repeat something that you just told me, just in case we edit it that way. But will you talk again about how you found, I keep forgetting how to say it.
Oh, it's called Falun Gong. Yeah.
Falun Gong. Thank you. And
yeah.
I hope to not mess that up again. Will you tell me how you found, or Falun Gong maybe found you?
Yeah. So for whatever reason, in high school, I just had this fascination with Eastern philosophy and meditation. And I just ran into a group of people at a health show who were volunteers who were involved in the Falun Gong practice. And I think it was pretty early on. Not a lot of Western people were in the Falun Gong community at that time. So Falun Gong, I think, kind of made its way outside of China and into the West, maybe like mid-90s. And then I came across it at this health show in '98. And at that point, I knew nothing about the political situation in China, and there was nothing going on with Falun Gong. It was practiced really widely in China. But these people, they just seemed to exude some kind of inner peace. And I tried the exercises with them, and it just felt something really connected with me. And I was just kind of drawn to it from that angle. And then, flash forward a year, and all of a sudden the Chinese state is saying, these people are outlaws and what they're doing is dangerous to society and needs to be rooted out. And it was just completely at odds with my experience of it. So I went from someone who was kind of looking for this peace and meditation and sort of thrust into the role of an activist or someone, just because I felt, what they're saying just doesn't add up with what I'm experiencing. And I felt I needed to speak out. And so that's how I got into the middle of all this.
And your story as a filmmaker, how long had you known in your life that you were going to be maybe a documentarian?
Well, I've produced other documentaries. I did a film with Adam Leipzig, was my producing partner. He was the former president of Nat Geo Films. He did March of the Penguins, and he'd been at Disney for a long time. Great guy. And that was a film on bullying directed by Manfred Becker, a Hot Docs alum that we had last year. And we've done docu-series. I have kind of an interest in Asian culture as well. We have a series called Confucius Was a Foodie. That's this kind of 19 times 1 hour docu-series that looks at the influences of Chinese cuisine around the world. So I've been in the doc space, but it was more, that this story, which I just mentioned, had like a personal connection in the sense that I had come across Falun Gong. I was part of the community, and I had sort of felt, the injustice of the Chinese state propaganda machine. But it was kind of thrown back into my face when I met this man, Chen Rei-Chang, who come recently out of China and who had, sort of survived the incarceration and the brainwashing efforts there. And he was someone who not only had been persecuted for his faith in Falun Gong, but he had previously been a sort of senior person in one of the major state-run television networks in China. And he came to this whole self-immolation story, that the film deals with from an angle. He was absolutely convinced that this thing was staged by the Chinese government. So this kind of like contrast of someone who, had been repressed and persecuted himself, but also had worked in the state media and crafted the news. It was just too fascinating. And it also made me feel like, this story that was very difficult for me to face, the self-immolation, these people setting themselves on fire. It was pinned on Falun Gong. It was pinned on something that I was doing at that time, and I had no real concrete answers for it. It just made me feel like, maybe we should be looking at this story. And so I had a background in documentary films, but this sort of made it a very personal angle. And I ended up obviously, narrating the film as well, and sort of including my own personal story in all of it.
And I'm so glad you did. That was you kind of accidentally became an activist, it sounds like, and that's pretty fascinating. And, but I was so happy to have, be able to see the progress in you as a person as you age and become who you are now, and able to make this film, and then to see where you started and understand that this has been a part of who you are for a long time now. I mean, this project has been wanting to come out of you, it seems like, for as long as it took to live it, right?
I think that's a great way of putting it. You know, a lot of times, you know, filmmaking is a process. It's a process of finding the story and finding a way of telling the story that is going to resonate with the audience, and that's an iterative process. But it is just as much an iterative process of discovering that story within yourself. And if it isn't personal, and if you're not learning something through it, and you already know what you're going to say before you begin, then I really question how deeply you've gone with the filmmaking. So I feel you're right. I did not see myself as the narrator on camera in this story. And even when it sort of came to me at first, I was fascinated by it, but I still felt a kind of a step removed. But as things progressed, you know, it starts to strike some nerves. And then obviously with the business I was doing in China, like, you know, and what the Chinese state did with that, it started to become personal. And before I knew it, it just made sense that, you know, I talked with my directing partner, Eric, and we were like, you know what, I think you got to narrate the film. And, and it just felt right, but it's not something I consciously pursued at the outset.
It's fascinating because you became quite an investigative journalist. I mean, the stuff that you were finding, that you show yourself in front of like microfiche files, and you're looking into some serious, you're really doing a lot of dirty work here to try and find something that makes sense to you, right? To help you make sense of all of this somewhat disparaging talk about something that you love and find to be empowering to you.
You know, that was, it was important. And maybe because of my own proximity to the story and how like close it was to me, I was adamant. And also my filmmaking partner Eric had no background in Falun Gong. And that distance was really important for me too, is that, you know, you want to come into something, not just to vent whatever, you know, injustice you might feel personally from the slight of this propaganda, or how, no matter how strongly you feel about the injustice that the people in China have suffered from it, you also have to come knowing that most people who are going to watch this film have no background in Falun Gong. They're going to see it from a different angle. They're going to have a lot of questions, and you want to make sure you don't have blind spots. And so Eric and I really pushed each other in that regard. And I think because of that, we dug as thoroughly as we could to try and find answers. And I think the other reason you have to dig is that there is no real opportunity for open questions and dialogue. And that's kind of the, you know, the irony of the title of the film, is just that, you know, these things, you would think if this happened anywhere else, if there was, you know, a human fire in a massive public square that was caught on camera, that you would be able to probe and ask questions and be able to debate what had happened. But you can't. There is one very quickly crafted official narrative that has just been put everywhere. And that narrative doesn't really hold water when you start to dig at it. So it requires thinking outside of the box and looking at other places to try and put something together.
That's so, as a practitioner, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be offensive, but do you still practice?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
And you don't feel any danger to yourself in that now? I mean, I hope not. I'm not trying to out a witness here or anything.
Right. No, you know, I guess it's funny, right? Because you go through this, and it was a conscious decision to involve myself in the film and to proceed with the film. And it's funny in a sense, because you get to a certain point and, you know, they're contacting Tencent and it's disrupting my business, and my wife's family is getting contacted. And there's a moment where you stop and you say, oh, you know what, like maybe this is someone else's thing to carry. Like maybe this is just a little bit too real. But, you know, you sit there and you think about it and you're like, well, hold on. That's exactly the logic that's being presented back to us. Like Lisa's story and what she went through is totally real, you know, and the threats that she faced, like these people, these reporters there, I mean, I know from one angle, there's a frustration about missing some of these events, but at the same time, these people didn't know Falun Gong that well. And, you know, and they had already, you know, risked police chases and all this stuff to get the stories out that they were witnessing before. So there was a level of courage, but even these people were essentially silenced because of the situation. So I realized, you know what, if we don't look at this story, and my wife and I talked about it because, you know, this was impacting our family in certain ways. If we don't talk about this, then who is going to talk about it? And so at a certain point, you have to say, yeah, you know what, there's consequences to doing it, but the consequences suffered by people like Chen Rui Chang, who we met in this film, and and the other witnesses that we interviewed who were detained. And there's others, of course, unfortunately, who couldn't appear in the film, but you see what these people endured and you're like, man, this is real and this is happening now. And it just didn't feel right to look the other way, and say, you know what, I'm going to give a pass on this. It just didn't feel right because these people are continuing to suffer that. So that was a conscious decision that we made. And I think we were able to sleep better as a result of it.
You followed the spark. That takes some bravery. I hear it. I hear that must have taken bravery on your choice and the conversations you must have had to have with people you love, knowing that this could be somewhat of an impetus for danger. Who knows what, but hats off to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the biggest threat is to the people who still have the connections in China. And so for me, it's like, what do I have at stake in China directly, personally? I have my business stuff, but at the same time, there are many people here who have a lot more at stake who adamantly wanted to tell their stories. And so I didn't want to stand in the way of them doing that. And even my wife, who, when we first met, didn't have any background in Falun Gong. Like, I was her connection to all of that world. But despite that, she's really come to strongly support what we're doing and believes it's important not just for the Falun Gong community in China, but for all of China, that these stories need to be told. And these people's, someone needs to speak up for the rights that are being violated.
Oh yeah, and the peaceful rights. I'd like to find out, since this is not current, like as of right now, has there been anything happening for you in this area of your life to continue this particular story?
So yeah, that's a good question. My next film is kind of another chapter in this story, but it's from a different angle. So, in this film, I'm leading an investigation. I'm looking at this piece of news, but what I uncovered through that process is that there are a lot of people on the ground in China who directly themselves are doing amazing things. And it just wasn't part of the story in this film, but we came across one just absolutely remarkable case of civil disobedience that would just, it blows my mind, and it blows my mind that people here don't know about it. And I just want to tell their story from their perspective and what they've done. And with that film, we have an artist who escaped from China who was a really accomplished comic book artist. And he is using his art to recreate the story that kind of shaped his hometown and this massive sort of incident of civil disobedience. And I don't want to spoil too much of it because we're in production on it, but I want to tell the story and really sort of pass the torch more onto the people who are inside China and are directly sort of facing this.
Wow, that sounds like quite a project. I really hope that you consider us for that as well. And it's his art that's used in the film to tell the story.
Yeah, we kind of recreate his experience through his own artwork, and we bring it to life. So he's a comic book illustrator. He's worked for DC. He's drawn Justice League. He's drawn Star Wars comics for Dark Horse, and he's got this amazing talent. And he had to flee and leave his comic book studio behind in China, but he's able to recreate. We interview all these witnesses, and we're recreating what took place in his hometown and bringing it to life, sort of bringing some CG to his illustrations. Yeah.
And this is another of those stories that just somehow stays hidden.
Yeah.
I mean, somehow through a lot of work.
You look at it, right? I mean, it's in the news now too, right? With what's gone on with Disney and such. And you understand, like, I gained more of an understanding through this project of like, the pressure on the large media companies and the incentives in the large media companies. Like China, no joke, is a major market. I can't wave a finger at other people and say you shouldn't be doing something there. Like, I was trying to get my game sold there. I had a distribution deal with Tencent. Like, I get it. It's a market. It's real. But at the same time, it's like, you make all of these small concessions along the way, and then you start to look back and say, hold on, what's going on here? Have we handed the narrative over to someone that we don't necessarily want to hand it over to? And what are the long-term implications of that?
So that's what you're doing, is you're taking back the narrative. I like that. I really you're at least opening the discussion to multiple sides.
Trying to, and I appreciate it, because you know what, it's like you take that risk and just say it just feels right, but then you get people like the good folks at Mint who are like, yeah, this is a story we want to tell. And that's the part that's encouraging for us, is that you follow your gut and your heart and you say this is the right thing to do, and other people are also agreeing and saying that's a story that needs to be told. So it's validating in that regard. Yeah.
Way to follow your heart. I want to ask a couple questions, kind of more about, so this is your first film that you've sent to a festival? Am I correct in that?
It's my first directing a feature film. Yeah.
Directing.
Both for Eric and myself. So I came at it from the producing angle. I mentioned I worked on some other films as a producer, and Eric came at it from the editing side of things. And then we were like, okay, we were collaborating around this and said, you know what, maybe we meet in the middle and kind of figure out this directing thing together for the first time. And it was a good push and pull, like me coming from within the Falun Gong community, him coming from without, him coming from the editing side, and me from producing. There was a really good kind of dynamic. We talked a lot about that. It felt like, it's kind of like when you make a film, it's like you're raising a kid. You put so much of yourself into it that you see it reflected back, and you get to a certain point where it's like it's ready to go off to the world, and you're like, you're letting it go. And in the same respect, when you co-direct something, it's a little bit like a marriage, because you have to develop this relationship of trust where you can put whatever concerns, thoughts, anything out there, right? But there has to be that level of trust. And, there's always going to be those conflicts and differences of opinion, but in a good relationship, you eventually arrive at a solution that just makes the film better, because you bring everybody's points to the table, right?
That's the way to do it. And follow-up question. So you and Eric are still on good terms? You're doing another project?
We're on great terms.
Is this follow-up project going to be with Eric as well?
Eric has helped me a little bit with it. He's got another film. So we both kind of came from different angles and then moved on to becoming directors through this. So Eric has got some project that he's leading creatively, and I've got another one, but we connect and we bounce things off of each other, and he's helped me edit a few scenes together and stuff. So it's all on good terms. It's just kind of, we're doing different things too at the same time. That's
cool. And this is by no means your first festival. Why don't you list all the festivals you guys have been? I know you were a slam dance.
Yeah, let's start with this. We'll go with the slam dance thing, because if I have to try and list them all, I'm inevitably going to offend one film festival that we've been.
I shouldn't make you do that. I know better.
Let's just say started with slam dance, and then next highlight is Mint. A few other stops along the way. But we have the European premiere coming up we're in this festival called Off, which is a cool, smaller festival. We're in the competition there in Poland in next month, which we're looking forward to, because this whole COVID thing, it threw everything kind of upside down. We feel fortunate, honestly, it could have been worse, because a lot of films didn't get their premiere, period. Right. And there was so much uncertainty for a lot of time. So we got that physical in-person experience, sharing the film with an audience at Slam Dance, which is a great experience. And then from there, what we did actually was, when everything else got put on hold, we were going to do DocFest in San Francisco, and we were going to be in Phoenix. And those were the first ones that were paused. And so what we did was, because, you see in the film, I have a, game studio, we do digital media. We decided, hey, what if we used virtual reality to try and recreate this kind of festival going experience, And so we partnered together with DocFest and with the Roxy, which is one of the sort of art house cinemas in San Francisco. And we created this experience where we screened the film on a screen in a theater, but it was a completely virtual reality theater. So you put on a headset and you go into this 360 cinema and you screen our film, and then we take everyone out to the patio after, and it's all avatars in a VR space, and we're doing a Q&A like we're doing right now in that space. And it just, it was, I think maybe because we were just missing this. It was at a time when everyone was in lockdown, and we weren't even knowing, are digital festivals going to happen? It was early for all of that stuff. And so everyone was we lacked that human connection, and we wanted to try and find a way to recreate it. And I think the answer for us from that whole experience is that you can't really replace it. Like, the work that you guys do I feel it's irreplaceable. But at the same time, there was something that was reminiscent of it, and it was so valuable to experience that. You could even in the VR space, you can give people high fives, and you get like a physical kind of reaction to it, right? And so we couldn't be close, we couldn't shake hands anymore, but in the VR space we could do that, and a lot of people, it was really quite emotional. It was a cool experience.
I bet it was emotional. That's really pushing. You guys, sounds like you put that together pretty quick too.
We did. I mean, fortunately, we kind of live in the VR space as well. I'm doing a VR film. I'm a short, and I'm also, we're developing virtual reality apps, and we've kind of have done that stuff already in the past. So we were suited to do that. And we got some technology partners. Big Screen makes good tech that kind of already allows you to create these theatrical experiences, and, you know, went from there. And it was a way for us to keep the film, you know, going in the press and stuff too, because it was novel, right? So people were interested in what we were doing.
Oh man, way to capitalize on that. I mean, that's maybe not be the right term, but that's a way to make lemonade out of a bunch of
Exactly.
lemons.
Right. Exactly.
Bunch of vitamin C too. That's what we need. um, so what's next for you guys? Actually, you told us about the next project, and how far along are you in your festival run for this year with Ask No Questions?
So, you know what? It's a busy month for us. We're in 4 festivals. We did sign with a distributor, and so we've got that kind of rolling out. We're with 1091, which has been a good relationship. We've got 4 festivals this month. We've got a few next month. We were really kind of hoping that things would thaw out, and there's like a new local festival that we were hoping by that time we could actually do an in-person, and the things like walking distance from my house, but they too had to cancel and go digital. So, you know, we're proceeding with the digital festivals right now, but I think we've got 4 right now, and a few more next month, and we'll keep it going. Right now, I guess off is our European premiere, and then we haven't done premieres in other territories, so we'll go from there. We did do we've got a broadcast deal for the Middle East, so it's playing on Al Hura, which is, I think, like a top 3 news channel there that has some good docs. So it'll be good to just get the film in front of a lot of eyeballs on another continent. We're excited about that.
Wow. Congratulations. That's quite a bit. That sounds like really hopeful, to at least hopeful to a lot of people seeing this, and then getting to see the next one as well, and continuing to carry on this conversation. I'm just so fascinated. I want to say thank you for making this piece. I'm very intrigued by Falun Gong. I'm excited to hear that it's still around. I want to look into it, because it seems like something that was working definitely for a lot of people. And, you know, when something gets told, when you get told you can't do something by a government, it kind of makes you want to look right into it, find out why.
Totally. You know, it's funny. My father-in-law, he's passed away a couple of years ago, but he was an official in Northeast China, and where Falun Gong was first introduced. And so we thought this was going to be an issue when we decided we were going to get married. My wife and I, she told him, like, hey, I found this guy and I'm going to get married, because she came overseas from China. Right. And she told him, you know, he's a Falun Gong person. And she thought he would be like really concerned because of all the propaganda that he must think Falun Gong is bad. But right away he said no. He'd seen so much from within the party that as soon as they said Falun Gong was bad, he suspected there must be something good about it. Otherwise they wouldn't be cracking down on it. So he didn't, he'd seen it because of someone who's kind of gone through all the stuff on the inside of the party. He had a different perspective on it. But it's just to your point that, you know, repressing information makes people really keen to try and find out what's really going on. Right. So we hope that motivates a lot of people to check out the film too.
Yeah, and this is obviously it's a timely situation with what's going on there currently right now. I just really look forward to people seeing your film and getting to start a conversation or continue on a conversation. And I look forward to getting more prompts on what I should be talking about from content coming from you. Jason, I really thank you for taking the time to chat with us.